So, there are things to consider. History of reinforcement. How much exposure does a person have to these reinforcement tendencies? Or, what are the effects and how they're going to respond to reinforcement in the future? Okay, this in turn affects the behavior associated with that reinforcement and the consequences. Basically, what we're seeing here is we need to know how much history, how much exposure the person has with a particular item or reinforcement. And is that person used to having to work for items with this particular behavior? How often, for example, was the behavior reinforced in the past? If it's not very much, then we're actually going to have to teach them how, to enter into the contingency that if you do this first, then you get this. Okay, what kind of reinforcement was given in the past? This might have to do with a particular brand of something, particular type of item, etc., etc. Okay, it's just something that we should consider. And how much of the reinforcer was given in the past. If you knew that the person was getting like 5 M&Ms for every correct response, and you're only trying to give 1, that's probably not going to work that well. We may have to shape it down, because 5 is a lot anyway, right? But maybe the person had a reason for that. I don't know. Again, this is really hard to do when there's no patient in front of me. The point being, though, is that we do need to consider how often the behavior is reinforced in the past, what kind of reinforcer was given in the past, and how much of that reinforcer was given in the past. Those are all things that we can do when we talk about the history of the reinforcement. Now I want to talk about something a little more detailed. Conditioned versus unconditioned reinforcement. Unconditioned reinforcement means that there's no learning history. It doesn't need to have a learning history to have reinforcing qualities. These are basically things that we don't have to teach that are good. Food, water, shelter, those are all things that are unconditioned. Okay? For us adults, right, sexual behavior typically does not need to be conditioned. Okay? It just feels good. Okay? Conditioned reinforcement, on the other hand, requires a learning history to have reinforcing qualities. No one is born knowing how to press the power button on a TV, right? Okay, you learn that because you press the power button, TV turns on. As an exercise, sometimes I would try to think about, what if in the world all the power buttons didn't work, and you had a new person come into the world, a new baby, and they grew up and no power button ever worked? Their behavior would probably reflect that. They wouldn't press buttons to expect things to turn on because it never worked for them. That's conditioned reinforcement in a nutshell. It requires a history of reinforcement. Okay, praise. Okay, is one of those. That's why we always are doing stuff like "good job," "high five." It's not a natural response sometimes. Something that we want to condition. It's something that, hey, when you do good, you get praised. You get told "good job." Tokens. Okay, think Chuck E. Cheese's or John's Incredible Pizza. Okay, you get those tickets, you can trade them in for something. Or money, for example. Money is conditioned, a good example of conditioned reinforcement. Money by itself has no real value unless you're cold and need to burn it up to keep warm. But what you can turn it into, that conditioned reinforcement, okay, that history that if I give this $1, I get this. That's where the reinforcement comes from. So again, there's conditioned and unconditioned. Unconditioned reinforcement requires no learning history to have reinforcing qualities. Food, water, warmth, sexual behavior. Conditioned reinforcement requires a learning history to have reinforcing qualities. Praise, tokens, to turn the TV on, money, so forth, so forth. So a type of conditioned reinforcement that you might use are tokens. Remember, tokens are neutral stimuli. These are given reinforcing qualities through being paired with reinforcing stimuli. Tokens must be paired with reinforcement before they act as reinforcement. For example, I can give my son $1 a day for 500 days for a total of $500, but if I never ever let him turn that money in to actually buy something, he's not going to understand that that money actually means anything. He's going to just think it's paper. Okay? So in the same way, tokens must be paired with reinforcement before they will act as reinforcement. Okay? So are there any times that you interact with regularly which work similarly to tokens? So money, gift cards, tickets at Chuck E. Cheese, airline points. Okay, those things are basically worthless on their own. But when they're paired with reinforcing stimuli, the tokens start to inherit those reinforcing qualities. I see this in video games a lot. In whatever system they have for point collecting, whether it be coins or whatnot, experience points, they become valuable because you can trade them into something. By themselves, they may not be worth much, but what you can trade them for, that's where they get the value.